Hey everybody, welcome to day 359 of Reseller Reflections, a day in the life of a full-time reseller supporting her family. It is Monday, June 2nd, 2025. And we did meet our sales goal today. We did meet it yesterday. So Sunday and Monday, all right, good start to the week. Let's hope it keeps going. I am reset to zero. I still have some shipping to do, but I'm going to do that when I'm done here and before I get ready for book club. Reading the Let Them theory. Yep, chapter by chapter. It's been quite an experience and kind of ties in a little bit to what I'm going to talk about tonight, and that's boundaries. So I if you've been listening, you know it has been a struggle with me for boundaries for the business, for personal. And I think it's a struggle for most of us. I'm going to link up an episode that we have done, a Consignment Chats episode on boundaries. Like there are physical boundaries, there are, emotional boundaries, there are all sorts of boundaries. And yeah, so I recorded a reseller reflection on blurred lines a couple days ago, which um, was good. I liked it. I thought it was good. I liked the idea of the blurred lines and blurring some of those lines. But in the same respect, we have to have some boundaries, and having boundaries with, I'm going to use like your business with consignment, especially that was a hard one, and it continues to be a struggle for those of us that are more empathic. We tend to take on other people's emotions. We tend to take on other people's problems and kind of absorb them as our own. And, people would come into the store with a sob story, like a real one. I'm not saying they were just making it, like I'm saying it's real. And, for us, we would always learn that lesson the hard way, make an exception, break the rule, break that boundary. And, you always, no good deed goes unpunished. The more I live, the more I think that is absolutely true. But how do you set those boundaries? You can definitely check out our episodes on dealing with consigners. I think there's some helpful tips in there, even with dealing with, if you're not a consignment seller, if you're dealing with customers, because you can really get sucked into that. And I think sometimes it's like, I know it is my absolute inclination is to want to help people and fix somebody's problem that's not mine. However, it is not a way that you can sustain a life or sustain a business, because you really have to take care of yourself and your business before you can take care of others. And one of the phrases we would use quite often, because people couldn't understand that, even family and friends, right? We still do the same percentage. We do, same rules, same regulations. And, if you're in that situation, and a lot of sellers are in that situation where they get into doing somebody a favor, selling Aunt Millie's furniture or whatever the case may be. But, Aunt Millie doesn't want to see your business go down, right? Like you have to be able to say, this is how if you want me to be able to sell stuff for you in the future, this is how I make a living. This is how I support my family. And, so this is why we do it. If I did everybody a favor and I ran the business more as a charity, I'm not going to be in business in a year or two. And what, I have another episode I have to link up, is our episode on sustainable fundraising. And the same goes, when you're working with nonprofits. Yeah, of course, we want to give as much as we can when we're doing fundraisers and things like that. But the reality of it is, and I've seen this happen countless times to countless businesses and countless resellers, is that, you want to give and give and give, and you're not sustaining the business. It's not sustainable. And then, you give for a year and then you can't, or your business doesn't exist anymore and you're not able to keep giving. So you need to be able to sustain that. You need to look into sustainable fundraising. It's, I think, a really cool concept that lets you make a living while you're supporting these things. And, the better you do, the more you can give. Yeah. So kind of like adopt that attitude. Well, this is going like way all over the place, kind of off the rails a little bit. So, that's business wise. How the let them theory comes in. We had been chatting a lot about, uh, taking on other people's emotions. And that was a real struggle for a lot of us as we were discussing this book is, if one of your family members or your kids or whoever is having an issue, a customer, a consigner is having an issue, and you take that on and you take those emotions on, how do you stop doing that? You practice. I believe there's a lot in the pause. Like, emotions are temporary. There's, the power of the pause. Take a pause, realize, all right, it's just an emotion, it's temporary, let me make a rational decision, and then respond and move forward, or say, let them. And this is going to be quite, it has been quite interesting putting it into practice and really drawing that line or that boundary, to be able to say, well, that's not my problem. And when you're empathic, it's yeah, gosh darn it, it's really hard. But I think the let them theory gives you some definite tools to be able to do that, and definitely gives you, uh, like, practical tools, practical examples, and discussing this in a group and knowing that other people struggle with the same things has been amazing. And really just being able to think about it and talk about it is great, because it can be very, very draining. And one of the things that I've realized is doing this is also, it takes every ounce of energy, um, to be social when you are constantly absorbing other people's emotions or feeling what other people are feeling. And then you just kind of withdraw. And I don't think that's not a happy medium. That's more of an extreme. So I think probably in the beginning the business was a lot more draining than it needed to be, because I didn't figure out those boundaries. And if you're in that situation now and you're trying to figure out those boundaries, trying to figure out like how to take a pause and make sure that other people's problems aren't yours, or you're not absorbing what their problems are and letting it drain you or your business. Yeah. All right. So just some casual things to think about tonight. I hope that's not too much, but I think it is definitely an interesting topic. And I did hear this thing that we shouldn't think of boundaries as walls. They're more like bridges, because when you put a boundary in place, it creates an opening for the right things to come into your life. So don't think of it as necessarily you're putting up a wall. Think of it as, you're making this, and you're not allowing certain things so other things can come into your life. So it's not necessarily putting up a wall. It's not necessarily a negative thing. It's not a negative thing at all. And it can be quite positive. So I'm going to continue working on it, and I hope you are too. Everybody have a wonderful night. I will see you on day 360. Yeah, 360 of Reseller Reflections. Night, night.